Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in the workplace and beyond and look for solutions as well. And I'd like to introduce my guest to you today, Melissa Garland.
Hello.
Hello, Melissa.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Morgan.
Nice to meet you as well. We met a little bit earlier, but this
Yes.
is our first official meeting on camera. Yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about Melissa. She is the creator of the Yoga Mastery Institute and the Living in Choice Stress Management Program. Living in Choice uses research-backed modalities to measurably and sustainably reduce individual stress, foster quality communication, and improve employee engagement and team performance. A former marketing leader with enterprise organizations including Samsung and Adobe, Melissa purchased a yoga business in 2013 and was both a business owner and a tech marketer for nearly a decade. Even as she experienced the debilitating mental health effects of stress and anxiety in her work life, she witnessed the positive impacts that yoga and meditation had on her customers at her yoga studio. That experience led to the creation of the Living in Choice program, which draws on lessons from business, yogic philosophy, and the science of happiness. Melissa speaks on the topic of living in choice, presents workshops, trainings, and retreats, and is currently writing a book that articulates the key tenets of living in choice philosophy. The Living in Choice program is offered on-site to businesses and to individuals at the Tadasana Yoga Studio in Park City. As I was getting to know you just on social media, I was interested just in that combination of mental health and yoga, just because there's a lot of there's research on that. There is a lot of good things that can happen from mindfulness and meditation. We were talking about that earlier. But so, and we kind of addressed it a little bit in the bio, but tell me a little bit about like your experience with mental health, how you got to the point, understanding the connection between that and what you need to do to move forward.
Well, one of the things I like to raise when asked this question, and by the way, thank you very much for having me here today. I should have said that first. It's a real honor to get to talk about this. I, as you won't be surprised to learn, did struggle with, and I guess where I'm going to go with this is I'm going to show you that I think a lot of us are struggling all the time at some level with mental health, quote unquote, challenges. Right. So to address that question a little more precisely, I'd like to start by just quickly touching on what we think of as the definition of mental health, right? I think there's this, while there are scientific definitions that are, cataloged, there is this perception among most of us average workers that that mental health is kind of a binary thing. You're either healthy mentally or you're not healthy mentally. And with that binary assessment, we then have it in this very strange way. We take that the unhealthy mental health so being mentally unwell tends to belong to an extreme set of outcomes, whether it's things like addiction or suicide or schizophrenia, right? And we assume that anything shy of that doesn't fit, doesn't mean mentally unwell, right? Whereas the rest, if you're not dealing with those things are awful and need to be addressed and need to be recognized. If those aren't problems that you face on a day-to-day basis, what's happening for most of, let's say, the rest of us is this constant state of anxiety, stress, worry, concern that seems to permeate our lives on a day-to-day basis, right? And it permeates our lives to such a degree that we often begin to accept it as the way it should be. That not only should I have some stress, but you end up hearing, I've heard colleagues like brag about how stressed they are, right? Or how much work they have on their plates or how overloaded they are. And it's a badge of honor.
Right.
So this is not new, but it's persistent and it permeates our lives. And it happened to me as well. I was someone who was seeking to keep up with the Joneses, who was seeking to, climb the ladders, who was seeking to, and there's nothing wrong with all of that. That's all, there are lots of wonderful things to be done and learned and experienced. But the outcome for me was that I was living in an ever increasing state of stress. I felt that at any moment, right, the balls were going to drop. At any moment, I'd snap at a kid. At any moment, the next meeting that my boss was calling me into was going to be like the end of something, right? And you begin to presume that things will be negative, bad, rather than presuming that, oh, my boss has asked me to come in quickly for a quick meeting, right? And the immediate reaction there is not one of, oh, great, I get to go talk to my boss. It's an, oh my God, what's going on now, right? And when that permeates our lives, then we take it home. Yeah. And it can be very, very debilitating. So that was happening for me. So as I was doing all of this, I started to study a bit of other ways that I could get out of that mental bad state, right? And I got quite into Buddhist studies, yoga philosophy studies, and other spiritual studies, which took a look at how the mind operates, right? And how we react to emotions, how we react to our thoughts. And that led me down a path of saying, okay, how can I bring more of that into my life? Oh, I do some yoga already. It wasn't structured in a way, but I started to explore it further. And so as I did that, other doors began to open, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I began to see that there was real opportunity to systematize, to structure ways of bringing these stress-reducing ways of operating into my life on a daily basis.
Yeah. I love that when you talked about mental health being binary, and now it's certainly not, right? Because like you said, people say, well, I must have good mental health because I don't have this really terrible mental health. But it's just like physical health, right? I mean, physical health isn't binary. You're not either healthy or sick.
Right.
You're anything in between. Some days you're kind of healthy and kind of sick. Some days you're a little more healthy. Some days a little more sick.
Right.
And we wouldn't say I'm completely healthy just because I'm not, I've been diagnosed with cancer or liver disease or something like that.
Right.
And so I think that's where people, when they take on this additional stress, like you said, sometimes is a badge of honor, especially when they're grinding, they're trying to, especially in tech, when there's just this kind of perception. We were discussing this earlier, how that's almost what's perceived as needed, right?
Yes.
And if you're not doing that, then you're somehow falling behind, but at the cost of what, right? And we have to attend to our mental health.
Right.
And you mentioned as well, like you said, there's nothing wrong with trying to do that grind, but you have to be mindful of how that's affecting you. That's
exactly right. And I think in that is this interesting discussion to be had about where does the stress arise, right? What is the quote unquote cause of stress? And that's something that every employer, the APA, American Psychology Association, all the state of Utah is trying to figure out. If we could just figure out what causes this stress, then we'll find a pill for it or whatever, we'll solve it, right? And thus far, in my opinion, I think there's a really interesting fact that needs to be addressed, which is that while there are external challenges that need to be faced and addressed, we're really not spending much time offering individuals tools to change what's happening internally.
Right.
And that's a big part of where I started to go with my career and my work.
And I think you're right. Most people, especially larger groups, governments and the municipalities, they're looking for the external.
Yeah.
Because you can deal with the external, right? You can throw money at the external, or you can create a program for the external. But when you're talking about the individual and the internal, that really is up to the person. They're the ones that have to make that change. You can purchase a program,
right?
But is the individual going to go to that program, or they're going to listen in the program, or they're going to execute when they come home?
Right.
I was just talking to a friend of mine who's recently recovering from knee surgery, and he said, I said, are you in physical therapy? He said, oh yeah, I go once a week. I said, are you doing your exercises every day? I said, because that's how physical therapy works. Right. You go home and do those exercises every day, not once a week with your therapist. And he says, oh yeah, I'm doing those too. I said, well, good. Yeah. Then it will work.
You're a step ahead. Of many.
Exactly. And it's that same sort of thing. I think the solution to a lot of the stress we have is internal.
Yeah.
When we make internal changes, but that requires day-to-day effort.
Also, what I'm here to share with you today is something that I've uncovered, which I think is really incredibly exciting, which is that we tend to look at these things and these tools, and the way they're often presented is, as you say, like you need to do it every day, and
Right.
there's a whole body of work that's being done in stress, addressing stress and so forth, that has requirements of 90 minutes of meditation a day, and like these very extensive retreats that take 8 hours a day, and they're wonderful and they're amazing when you go do them. Nobody has the time for that.
Right.
Nobody has the 90 minutes to say. Nobody's even doing the 5 minute. Like
Exactly.
these small little. So how do we make this accessible? Is really the interesting question to me, because for employers who are spending, I don't know, in 2022, $51 billion globally, or I think nationally, on stress management programs for employees. The employees are sent off on their spa day or their day off or their extra. And believe me, I was an employee. I like those things too. I get it. I don't want to take that away from anybody. But at the same time, they come back. The problem hasn't gone away.
Right.
They didn't address what's going on in the head, right? They don't address the real underlying issue. So why don't they? Because the tools are hard to use. They seem to currently require a lot of time and effort and commitment, and the employer kinds of employers are offering them as this add-on, adjunct, out here, try it if you want, even though we know it's a problem.
Right.
But it's kind of still sitting out there as we don't know what the uptake will be.
Right.
Employees
Right.
say that they're struggling. They say they want these things. We offer it, but they don't take it. So, so how can we get in with a program that can be used quickly and understood, and that's something that I think and is very accessible, and that's something I think I may have stumbled across.
Right. Well, and that's so you bought the yoga studio,
Yeah.
and then so when you said that you were trying to grind and become successful, was that as the yoga studio owner?
No, that
Or
that was in the
prior to
world
that?
of global tech marketing,
Okay.
and I was working for these big companies around the world, and it was fun and exciting, and it was just a constant stress.
Sure.
Constant stress. You go spend everybody I know will attest to this. You spend all day working, and then you go home and do all the work that you didn't have time to do during the day because you had so many meetings and all of that, right?
Mm.
And by the way, tomorrow morning is the presentation, and somebody needs to review it tonight, and you can't get the data because so-and-so's already gone to bed, and how do you reach out to Asia to get the answer? Yeah,
Right.
It's just this really challenging world that has been established, in particularly for global, but also for the startups who've got to hit their numbers, and also for the right. It's just constant. So to live in that state, I was saying, okay, I really, as a side project, I bought a yoga studio because it was one I went to regularly, and the woman who owned it wanted to sell it, and I was like, well, this will be one way for me ultimately to get free yoga. Like if I own the place, I can go whenever I want. Yeah, bad joke, but it was it kind of ran itself. It was it's just a little business. But in the course of running it, I saw people come in, and I watched this really kind of interesting thing happen, which is that people would, if they got into it, which there's a whole barrier there, people who don't get into it for various reasons.
Sure.
I'm doing a whole thing now with men and trying to get men in the door to this practice. If they got into it and they stuck around long enough, then eventually some of the components of both the physiological experience as well as the mental kind of drippings of thoughts and ideas that were sent by teachers would lead to people coming to me and saying, I remember one guy came to me, he's like, I know what you're doing here. And I said, what's that? He goes, he's like, you're changing minds. And I said, yeah, that's right. I said, this is a physical, practice, but it's really about changing how your mind
Absolutely.
shows it. Right. So that's all great. But what kept coming up for me was, how do I that took that guy 2 years to come to me and say that. How do you accelerate that process? How do you compress? What if the guy comes in the door and is like, I can't figure this out and I don't understand how, so I'm out, right? Not just men, women too. And so that was what spurred me. So I was working, I continued to work, but I was inspired by these things that were happening and my own experience to say, can I create a program? Can I look at what's happening and try to craft something that can make yoga more accessible, make the components of it that are truly impactful more embedded in the experience,
Right.
and then craft something that could be delivered to a lot more people. So there's a much longer story here, but the short version is that I created a curriculum that helps people learn the physical movements. So it's like taking the concept of martial arts with belts and applying that to yoga. So we have levels of learning, and you start at the foundation and you grow. And that's fantastic. That's helped people go, oh, I didn't realize that this move is also that move. It's just a more simplified version or advanced version of it. And so now I can do it. That's been great. But what we did along the way was two things. One, I added 5 minutes of meditation to the practice at the beginning, and a very specific kind of meditation, focused attention meditation, which is about teaching the mind to stay in one place. 5 minutes a day, super quick, frankly. And not even 5 minutes, 5 minutes when you come to class, right? And then at the end, I added a 15-minute mindfulness discussion where we bring in readings from all kinds of writers, all kinds of, not just Buddhist or yoga philosophy, but I've even pulled a passage from Jerry Seinfeld's latest Netflix special where he talks about how nobody wants to be where they are in the moment, right? Which makes everybody laugh because he's telling a true
the truth.
story. How do I get out? What's next? Nobody wants to be right now, right here. We all want to be somewhere else, right? And these are philosophical ideas which, when discussed in a small group, on the heels of 5 minutes of meditation and 50 minutes of deliberate movement, which calms the nervous system, suddenly people are open to looking differently at ideas, which results in changes in mental attitude. So I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but that's the program that got crafted. Right. And what we put around that was measurement. So we measure flexibility, balance, and strength, but we also measure perceived stress. So we use the APA's perceived stress scale, which is a 10-question scale that's been used for, 10 years or more, maybe many more now, and asked people to take it at the beginning and take it after a month. And I had a cohort go through this, and we saw dramatic results in stress reduction. And so there's some wonderful stories to tell about that, but all of that led me to realize that there's probably a way to take this to a lot more people and help people see that they have the ability to change the way they see the world. So I'm tempted to go down a path. I sort of want to share with you a little bit about where the mindfulness discussions go, so we could talk about that if you'd like. There's an interesting sort of the living in choice concept starts to go there. Well,
that's what I was just going to ask. So you're describing the living in choice program, right?
That's right.
That's the combination of movement and mindfulness and meditation. And earlier we were talking about, you said there were three things you said that the program addresses. Tell me again. It was movement and
so movement. So meditation's first,
right?
Then movement, and then mindfulness. But what that really means is teaching the mind to focused attention, teaching the body to have strength and flexibility and balance so that you can move your body in choice, right?
Right.
When you fall, you are in reaction, right? It's a reaction to something that's happened. When you place your foot down, that's a choice. And to do the placing over the falling, it requires flexibility, balance, and strength.
Right.
And as we know, the mind and the body are very intimately connected. They are the same, effectively.
Right.
So when the body begins to move in this more deliberate, in-choice way, which includes what we do think is a lot of focus on spinal manipulation, a lot of focus on core, a lot of focus on muscle isolation. So you're tensing and releasing, which raises the heart rate and lowers it very kind of quickly over a period of time, which ultimately, there's some research on this too, that is what calms the nervous system. So, and we're doing it in combination with breath work, which is, again, there's this world, by the way, where I think we've gotten all this wonderful access to stuff that starts to sound very complicated, right? There's a million types of meditation. Which one should I do? I don't know how many, which app and who should I listen to? They're all wonderful.
Right.
But how do I pick, right? There's a million types of yoga, right? There's a million types of movement. It's all great. Go bike, go hike, go run. These things are all fantastic. But how do I find something that's going to have a deliberate impact? There's a million types of breath work. There's a whole world of breath work out there now. And then there's this whole world of therapy that's addressing things like, how do I change the way I view my problems, right? So my whole goal has been, how can I simplify this? And how can I make the access to it, as well as the actions that you would take as a participant, to be super easy, crystal clear, and not in question. So I'm going to teach you how to focus your mind for 5 minutes a day. I'm going to teach you how to calm your nervous system. And it's very deliberate movement. It's repeated every time. It incorporates breath. And as you do it, you literally feel your whole body begin to relax, right? And then let's talk briefly, not about your problems necessarily, or mine necessarily, or about anything it doesn't ask anybody to reveal their deepest vulnerabilities. What it asks is, what do you think about the idea that you are not your thoughts? And we get a group of people to sit around and read a passage about this idea. Thoughts arise. Are they me? Or are they just something that arose that I can choose to interact with or not? I'm not telling you whether it's right or wrong. But when you get 10 people around a room to say, yeah, I could see how I don't actually always choose to react to my thoughts. Sometimes I ignore them. Oh, let's talk about emotions. Here comes some anger, right? Is that anger me? Is it who I am? Or is it something I can choose to not respond to today, let's say, or to look at the source of? And we discuss those concepts. And people in a room, when their mind is focused and their bodies are calm, will discuss these topics in a way that results in change. They walk out of the room going, yeah, then that guy cut me off and I kind of went, he's probably in a rush. So I don't need to react.
Right.
And those are the movements. Those are the changes. You leave the space and you go back to your desk and your boss calls and says, can I talk to you quickly? You watch the reaction, go, oh my God, it's something, Wait a minute, that's a reaction. It's a response. It's an emotional charge, but I don't have to identify with it.
Right.
I don't have to react to it and get into a panic and feel my heart rate raise and then, pack my bags because I'm probably going to be fired. The kind of stuff that happens in people's heads.
Catastrophizing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we help each other learn that we don't have to live that way through this combination of things. And we can take that to a group of people in a corporate environment and they walk away from the very first meeting going, oh yeah, maybe there's something different in the way. So it's me. I'm in control. I get to change. I get to be the one who decides whether I'm going to live in stress or not. And that's so freeing.
Yeah. So explain how that happens. You said you take this to the corporate world. So
yeah.
So they come to you, you go to them. How does this work?
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, the way we're doing it is bringing it on site to people, to companies. And that's another, oh my goodness, the employees are all over the world. How do we, so that's a challenge. But my response to that is what price? Stress reduction, right?
Sure, yeah.
Right. So if you want impact, if you want to help give your employees tools that will have radical results quickly, that you can measure, and that you can measure both short-term and long-term, the fastest way to do that is to get people in person, right?
Yeah.
Teach them. If I try to teach you over Zoom how to move your body or to try to have a conversation over this topic, yes, we'll get a little distance, right? But we won't have the same impact. Yeah. So for now, I'm really focused on trying to be in the room, on site. We try to keep the groups small, really no more than 20 people, as you can imagine, because you want to give people the chance to talk. Yeah. You want to give people the chance to move. And then, the response I'm getting, one side of the response I get to this is, we can't possibly take that much time out of an employee's day. And I keep coming back to that same question. Really? Can't you? You know, and you're giving them a day off for a mental wellness day.
Right.
What if we took 90 minutes of that and did this instead, and you saw the impact? So there's a bit of work to be done here to really help employers understand the value of getting their employees. It's the hands-on tools. It's the experience of doing these things. So I find that, my own experience as an employee and totally understand. I worked in the HR industry for a while. Totally understand this. These poor HR employees, their jobs are to try to find ways to satisfy and address these problems.
Yeah.
What do? They bring in, the guy who wrote the book or the gal who wrote the book about whatever, and they sit up on a stage and they talk. And a lot of them have wonderful, amazing things to say. Don't get me wrong. But I take the book and I walk away and I don't do anything about it as the recipient of it, right?
Yeah.
And what needs to happen instead is we just need to give person-to-person tools. And it's simple, it's doable, it's easy. It doesn't even matter if you are, if physically you're not able to do some of the things that you think of as yoga. Just the breath work.
Exactly.
Goes a long way.
Yeah.
Sounds like something you've had experience with too. Yeah.
And anybody can do it, and you can adjust it to any skill level and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly
for
right.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really exciting journey because I see so much pain. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
There's just so much suffering out there. I went through it, and even today, so now I'm dedicated solely to doing this. So now I have the stresses of being of being a business owner, and how is this going to take off, and how do we market it, and and in that exercise, okay, right?
That's right.
All I apply the tools to myself, but I am very cognizant of my own, like when my stress is down. When I am correctly living this way, living in choice, my sense of presence, right? My appreciation of each moment, it starts to sound a little silly, but gosh, it's just so true,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like meeting someone new, having interesting conversations, getting out in your day and experiencing the outdoors, all whatever it is that we get to do so much wonderful thing, so much of here in this wonderful state. But anywhere to just my joy, my excitement, my thrill of being alive goes way up.
Yeah.
Way up.
So if people want to learn more, where do they go?
Yeah. So we have a website specifically for businesses, and it's YMI, so Yoga Mastery Institute, YMIstressed.com.
Why am I stressed?
There you go. Yes. Clever marketing.
Very clever.
The letter Y, the letter M, the letter I, stress.com, and it explains about the program. You can contact me and learn more about how we can do it for them. Yeah.
Melissa, thank you so much for coming and for explaining these things and for offering this help to people. I think you're right, the need is out there. I think once people understand the benefit that it'll bring and return on investment, it's kind of a no-brainer. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David.
You're
It's such a
welcome.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.